Hi, my name is Vegard Polland. I'm a developer at Signicat, and today I'm going to show you how you can utilize our signature API. Let's get started. As you can see on my screen, I am now inside the developer dashboard. Here you can manage your account, your OAuth clients, and more. In order to get access to our signature API, we need to set up a new OAuth client. So let's head over to the API client submenu here. You press the button here that says New Client, give it a name, select the client credentials flow, and we need to create a secret. We should copy this secret right away because it will disappear after we have created a client. Now that the new client is created, we should configure it with some scopes. Head over to the OAuth OpenID config, click Edit. Here we should select the document scopes. We should select document write in order to create new documents, document read to be able to fetch data about them at a later time, and document file to be able to download the signed files. Let's save. Then we are good to go. My favorite language is C#, so I'll be showing an example using our .NET SDK. As you can see, I've already created a console application in Rider, and here I've added a demo PDF, and I've installed the IDFI SDK. It's called IDFI SDK because the Express APIs used to be called IDFI before. We will change the name on the SDK soon. So let's start off by writing out the client secret that we copied from the dashboard earlier, so we don't lose that. Normally I wouldn't hardcode this into the code, but it's okay for the demo. You should store it in a safe place. And we need a client ID. So let's head over to the dashboard again. Here in the overview, you can find the client ID. So let's copy that. And as you might remember, we added some scopes to that client, so we should ask for those scopes as well. Or let's just use an array. Inside the SDK there is an enum called OAuth scope, where you can easily select which scopes you want. So let's select document write, document read, and document file. Also, it should declare the iSignature service, which we can use to create new documents and modify them. Now let's create a new method where we can create a new document. This will return an object called document. Inside there we will just return signature service. We need to make it static. Create document async. Need to add some document create options. That's basically our request to the REST API. So the create options looks a lot like the properties you will find in our REST API documentation. Let's start out by adding a title, which is required. And we need to add some contact details. These contact details are shown to the person that's going to sign the document, so that they know who to contact if they need support. Let's just add a dummy email. Actually, email is the only one that's required, but you can also add your URL, phone number, etc. You need to add an external ID, which is your reference to the document. This should be unique. And we need some data that we are going to sign. This will be sent in as a base64 content. So first let's fetch a file from our disk. PDF as bytes file, read all bytes. Let's use the demo.pdf that I've added to the project. Then we need to convert them to a base64 string. That's it. Also, we need to add a title. Or actually we don't. That is optional. Let's just do it. Demo PDF. But what we do need to add is a file name. .pdf. It does not need to match the actual file name, but it needs the correct extension. Last but not least, we need someone to sign the document, so we need to add a list of signers with some options per signer. And what's required here is signature type. You need to specify a mechanism. I won't really go into details here, but I can tell you quickly that you can choose between handwritten, identification, PKI signature, or a combination of handwritten and identification. So the weakest signature, evidence-wise, is the handwritten one, but the strongest one is the PKI signature, which utilizes the native signature capabilities of the EID. So we'll use that for this example. And inside here we can also list which signature methods you will be able to select, but let's just leave it blank. Also, we need an external signer ID, which is your unique ID to the signer. Lastly, we need to add some redirect settings. We need to tell what should happen when the signer is done with his or her signature. Lastly, we need to add some redirect settings. We need to specify what will happen when the end user is done signing. So we specify a redirect mode. For this example, I will use do not redirect, which will use the default landing page. Otherwise, you can choose an iframe flow or a redirect flow. So now that we have all the document create options in place, we can test to see if this works. Let's firstly change the main method to an async task. Then we can await the sorry, our result. Click await, create document. And each of the signers that we added to the document will contain a URL. So let's find the first URL. We just added one signer, so we'll just select the first one. And we'll open it in the browser. Process.start. Use the command line. There we go. And I'll add a console.read key so the program won't exit before it's able to start the process. Let's test it out. And of course, we need to create a new instance of the signature service. There we go. Let's try it out. You can see we have now successfully created a new document that can be signed. Now, before I actually sign the document, I would like to add some code that makes sure that we can download the file result, fetch the status of the document, and fetch the signature info. So let's start by giving the user a few choices. I'll give the user a few choices here. Press 1 to fetch the document status. Two to download PADES, which is the sign file. 3 to fetch signature info. That means name of signer, unique ID, and more. And 4 to exit. Okay, we need to declare input. New console key info. And we'll put it inside a while loop. While input not for. And of course we need to read the input. Bam, I'll just make a simple switch statement. On the input character. On the first case, we would like to fetch the document status. So now I'll add a new method called print document status. And as an argument, we actually need a document ID. Okay, so we can use the signature service to fetch the current status of the document. Get document status async and pass the document ID as an argument. The only thing this method will do is to print the current status to the console. Firstly, I'll just serialize it to a JSON string. Using Newtonsoft. With some formatting and a string enum converter, because the result will contain some enums, so it is easier to read them if we have them as strings. There we go. That case should be handled now. In the second case, we want to download the PADs and the signed PDF. We will create a new method for that as well. Here we also need the document ID. As usual, we will use the signature service. And here we also have to specify the file format we want to fetch. So this time it is PADs, which is the signed PDF format. As you can see, this method returns a stream. We would need to declare a file name, which we will give the PADs when we save it. I'll just use the document ID underscore PADs.pdf. We'll open a memory stream. I'll just write the file to disk. With the file name and the memory stream to array. And I'll just give a short message that the PADs is saved. Okay, then we should be good. The last case we need to handle is to fetch the signature info. On each signer on the document, there will exist a document signature, which will contain the name of the signer, if the EID provided this, and a unique ID, along with other interesting properties. As usual, we need a document ID. So now we can actually choose if we want to fetch a single signer, which we could do with get signer, I think, or get signer, or we can fetch the entire document. So I'll just fetch the entire document for this example, or something called document summary, which is a minified version of the document, can also be used. And then I'll just loop through all the signers in the document. Serialize the document signature. Sorry. With some formatting and the string enum converter to make sure the enums are written out as strings. I'll write it to console. And there we go. I think we should be able to run this program now. There we go. A new document was created and we can now sign it. Before I do that, I will show you the current status of the document in the console application that we made. So as you can see here, it has written to the console, press 1 to fetch the document status. So I'll do that. And here you can see the status is unsigned, which makes sense because we haven't signed it yet. And there are no completed packages. So for each signable file, there will exist a status for the packages. So when the path is done, it should show up here. Let's sign it then. As you can see, we can now choose between 3 signature methods. That is because my test account currently has 3 signature methods configured. Also, in the signature request, we could ask for just one of them if we wanted to. Then we will just skip this menu. Today I'll be using bypass to sign the document, which is a Norwegian smart card reader signature method. This is the test PDF. Click sign. Enter my PIN. And there we go. The document is signed. I'll just close the browser. And now we can try to fetch the document status again. And as you can see now, the document status has signed. The completed packages include standard packaging and PADs. The standard packaging format is a XML file which contains an audit log, the native signature with more info. This is also embedded as an attachment in the PADs. If you now click 2 to download the PADs, it should be saved, and it says PAD saved successfully. So now let's take a look at it. Here it is. And now we can see I open it in Adobe. On the first page of the PADs, we have a front page with a list of all the signers. Here you get some info about the EID used, the date and time, and it is possible to add some more information if needed. As you can see here, it says not valid for production, which is why it is invalid. But in a production environment, you wouldn't get this error, you should get a green. In a production environment, you wouldn't get this error. Everything should be okay. And if you open the signature panel, you can actually see the signature. And the attachments contains the XML file, which contains a trace of the signature along with the native signature evidence and more. We have one thing left to do, and that is to fetch the signature info. We'll press 3. And here is an example of what the signature info contains. It shows the signature method that was used, the name of the signer, the signature time, the date of birth, if it exists, signature method unique ID, which is a unique identifier tied to the person signing the document, the social security number if you ask for it and are allowed to fetch it, and the client IP.